All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mostly gentlemen. All right. We are Daf Yomi for the week, sponsored by Shmuley and Miriam Fuchs, Eli Nishma Shmuley's mother, Bailey Yentel Bas Elchanan Alashom, Mir Neshama have an Aliyah. We are starting the new parak of Ezehum Mekomon, as we said yesterday, the parak of Mishnayos that has no arguments in the entire thing.
That's a miracle.
It's an incredible thing, and we say it davening every morning. So therefore, now, right? It's good idea now that once we understand the things that are actually said in this Mishnayos, that will help our kavanah in davening. So let's get going. Ezehum Mekomon shel Zevachim. Where is the location where the korbanos of the Zevachim are brought? Let's bring our map. Okay. This is the Beis HaMikdash. The second Beis HaMikdash, to be precise. The first Beis HaMikdash, well, the Mishkan. The Mishkan is told. We learn about where the rules of the Mishkan from the Sefer Shmos. We learn about the first Beis HaMikdash. The first Beis HaMikdash is in Sefer Melachim, when Shlomo builds the first Beis HaMikdash. Second Beis HaMikdash is
the same size.
Sorry?
Well, the smaller one is the same size as the second.
Second one is bigger. So the second Beis HaMikdash is built, is detailed in Maseches Midos. That's where this picture is from. And the third Beis HaMikdash is in Sefer Yechezkel, right? Sefer Yechezkel. Okay, cryptic, but there it is. So those are our Batei Mikdash that it should be built. So where is the location of the Zevachim? So Kodshei Kodshim, the holy of holy offerings that we've been discussing. So Shchitasam B'Tzafon, the slaughtering of them is in the north. Now, you have to sort of orient yourself on this picture. North is down, okay? South is up, okay? So that makes this west and this east. So everything is backwards. I don't know if I should flip it upside down so that it's easier. Then all the words are upside down.
Better?
Yeah, if you flip it the other way. North is down in this picture, okay? So north side. We have had discussions about what is the north side of the Mizbeach. Is it just the direct north opposite the Mizbeach? The north includes from this area in the middle between the Beis HaMikdash and the front of the Mizbeach as well? Or is the north all the way up here as well, this section, right? But either way, north, they're all the korbanos of Kodshei Kodshim are slaughtered in the north. Par v'seir shel Yom HaKippur, we're talking about the bull and the goat of Yom Kippur. Shchitasam b'tzafon, their slaughtering is in the north. V'kibul daman b'kli shares b'tzafon, and then you have to catch their blood in a service utensil in the north. V'daman ton hazaya al bein habadim, and then you take their blood and you sprinkle it on between the poles that are in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Aron HaKodesh is in the Kodesh, the Holy of Holies, in this section here. And the poles that were in there were never removed, so those poles stick out, and the Kohen Gadol would go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and he would sprinkle 8 times, once up, 7 times down, inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim Bein Habadim. Then he would go out al haparoches, and he would sprinkle again 8 times. He would be standing out here, and he'd sprinkle it towards the parochas. 1 times up, the parochas is the curtain that was between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, 8 times. Ve'al mizbeach hazahav, then he would go and he would sprinkle onto the altar, the gold altar, which is inside, small little gold altar, and he would make 4 applications on the 4 corners, and then he would, on the 4 corners of it, and then he would sprinkle 7 times on the top of the Mizbeach HaZahav, as we've learned.
The gold altar was in the Kodashim?
The gold altar was in the Kodesh, right? The regular Beis HaMikdash, right here, that little square right here, the Heichal. Okay? Interchangeable language to make sure that we know the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Kodesh, which is also known as the Heichal, right? Okay, al Mizbeach HaZahav, on the gold Mizbeach, Mizbeach HaZahav, the gold Mizbeach is also called Mizbeach HaKtana, the small Mizbeach, because it's on the inside, and the other one is it's Mizbeach HaPnimi, it's also Mizbeach HaKtoras.
This is the big one or the small one?
That's the big one, right? That's the outside one, okay? Matana achas mehen me'akeves. If you are leaving out any one of the blood applications, then the offering is not successful. Shiari Adam, the leftover blood, hayashofich al yisod maravi shel mizbeach hachitzon. You would pour it onto the western hole of the outer mizbeach. So you go out, here's the outer mizbeach. And then the western side is this side of the mizbeach. And if we take a look at this mizbeach, labeled here, Yehuda mizbeach hachitzon, as in the outside mizbeach, right? These are the steps going out. Here's our Kohen pouring the blood into the hole, which is on the west side, right? There was also a hole. This is the southwest corner. There's a hole on the south side too. You don't pour the blood of these inner korbanos in the south one. You pour it in the west one. We'll see why, but that's where the hole is, right on the bottom there. That's where you're pouring the leftover blood
of the Yom Kippur.
Of the Yom Kippur and the bull of the Seir, the Seir of the Avodah Zarah, the Par Helam Davar and the Par Kohen Mashiach, the 5, right? V'im lo nasan lo ikev, but this opinion, this Mishnah says that if you don't pour the blood, that doesn't mean that you've not fulfilled the korban is valid. Now, this is interesting because there are machlokas, there are arguments on some of these points. We've seen different opinions as to whether it's necessary or not, but it's just not brought here, right? Yeah. So that's interesting.
Where do you find the machlokas?
And we just had them like last week, right? We discussed many of these arguments, whether Shiraim is ma'akev or not, was we discussed yesterday, right? But nevertheless, not an argument here. Parim ha-nisrafim, usi'irim ha-nisrafim, the bulls that are burned, and we call them the bulls that are burned because after the blood is sprinkled, you take the insides and you burn them on the mizbeach, and the rest of the bull is burned outside, right? That is the seir that is burned is the seir of avodas kochavim, and is the seir for idol worship when the community worships idols. Parim ha-nisrafim and the seir of nisrafim. So shchitasam b'tzafon, those also, their slaughtering is also in the north. V'kibel daman b'kli sharis, you catch their blood in the service utensil b'tzafon in the north. V'daman ton hazaya ala paroches v'mizbeach hazav. Their blood does not get sprinkled in the Holy of Holies. Only the Kohen Gadol only goes in the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. So therefore, only the goat and the bull of Yom Kippur get sprinkled in the Holy of Holies. These korbanos, even though the sprinkling takes place inside the Beis HaMikdash, not in the Holy of Holies. So you skip the first sprinklings, and you just go right to the ones by the parochas and the mizbeach hazav on the golden altar.
Are there 2 pars for the Kohen Gadol and 1 set?
There's one for the Kohen Gadol, one for the Par Helam Davar for the Beis Din, when the Beis Din makes a mistake.
But on Yom Kippur, there's only 1 par that goes in.
That's correct. One par and 1 seir on Yom Kippur. Okay. Then matana achas mehen me'akeves, one sprinkling will withhold and make the service not valid. Shiyari hadam hayashofech al yisod maravi shel mizbeach hachitzon. You pour the blood the same way on the western corner of the western base of the mizbeach, of the outer mizbeach. V'im lo nasan lo ikev, even if you don't put that, it does not hold it back from being valid. Elu ve'elu nisrafin ha-beis hadeshen, and both of them, the animals are burned in a place called the Beis Hadeshen. The location of the Beis Hadeshen, I am not sure, right? It is outside. That is a great question. So I was saying, it is not exactly sure where it is. It is outside of Yerushalayim in a location known as the Beis Hadeshen. The Gemara says here that it's promised that there are 3 places called the Beis Hadeshen. We'll discuss in Daf Kuf Daled, which I haven't prepared yet. So when we get to the page 104, potentially we'll learn more about the Beis Hadeshen. But that is where the animal is burned, and nobody eats that. Okay, says the Gemara. V'neisnei nami kibul daman b'kli sharis bit safon. Why doesn't it say by the kodshei kodshim? It says their shchita is done in the north, right? But it doesn't say that you catch their blood in a kli sharis in the north. Right, as those are the rules in the beginning, which was talking about. Right, so it starts off and it says, well, I mean, this is the rule by all of them. So it starts off and it says these are the offerings of the kodshei, and then it goes in and starts talking about each one, the ones for Yom Kippur, and then it talks about the ones that are burnt, the parim hanisrafim and the seir hanisrafim. Why didn't it just say at the beginning that you need to be able to catch all of their blood in the service utensil?
Okay.
But
The Beis Hadeshen.
Yeah.
The Beis Hadeshen is a specific spot, the northeast corner of the temple of Ashdod.
Yeah, but that's not this Beis Hadeshen, right? That's the Beis Hadeshen where they would scoop the ashes from the top of the mizbeach and they would put it there. That's also called a Beis Hadeshen, but it's not the same Beis Hadeshen. Okay, but easily confused, but not the same. Okay, now, so the answer is Kevan Deka Asham Mitzora. The answer is because there's an Asham Mitzora offering as part of this rule of kodshei kodshim. Right? If you're going to say that this is the rule by all kodshei kodshim, it's not true, because the Asham Mitzora Dekibel Damo Biyad. We learned that part of the offering of the Asham offering, the guilt offering of the of the Mitzorah was we needed the Kohen to catch some of the blood with his hand. Oh, we didn't learn that yet. We're learning that now. Part of the act, so sometimes I get confused which Daf Yomi I'm doing. Say we have to catch the blood in the hand. Okay, so who the kibul dama biyad hu shayrei. So therefore it's left. It can't. The Mishnah can't tell us that it's the rule by all of them that all korbanos have to be caught in a klisharis, because there is a korban asham where you have to catch some of the blood in the hand, and then you take them. When the Kohen catches the blood in his hand, he then applies that blood to the person who's the mitzorah. Then the blood that's caught in a utensil that gets put on the mizbeach. So it has its own unique rule. Since it has its own unique rule, it didn't want to make that the generality. Okay, so. Velo, 1 second, you're telling me that a Asham Mitzorah doesn't get caught in a utensil? Vaktani law lekaman, we learn later on, Asham Nazir, Asham Mitzorah, Shchitos Mitzafon, that when it comes to later on in this parak, that the Korban Asham of the Nazir, the Asham of the Mitzorah, they're slaughtered in the north, V'kibel dam klishares Mitzafon. And then you're supposed to catch their blood in the north. It says it right there. So the answer is, Meikara Savar Kibel Damo Biyad Hu Shayrei. The answer is, this Mishnah is thinking about the kibul dam, the catching of the blood that's in the hand. So therefore, it leaves it out. Then, since that's not enough, right? Because you have to do both. You have to catch it with your hand. You need 2 kohanim catching blood by that korban. One, the kohen catches it with his hand, and then you have to catch more blood in a utensil. So therefore, since it's not true, you only can catch it in a utensil, it's left out here. Later on, since it's also true it has to be caught in a utensil, they include it. So therefore, both things are true. Tanya is going to brisa. Velakach, the pasuk that's talking about, right, the Asham Mitzorah, it says, Velakach ha-kohen midam ha-asham, the kohen shall take from the blood of the Asham v'nasan ha-kohen al tnuch ozen ha-mitaher yamanis. He then takes it and he puts it on his right earlobe, Val bohen yado hayaminis, on his right thumb. Val bohen raglo hayaminis, his right big toe. That's where he places the blood. So velakach, he takes it. Yachol bekli. You might think that he's supposed to use a utensil. Catches the blood in the utensil and then places it on tamalomar. Therefore it says vin nasan. Right? It says that he should take it and he shall place. Man nesina ba'atzmo shel kohen. Just like placing the blood is done with the kohen's own hand. Af lekicha ba'atzmo. So too, catching the blood must be, as they're hekish, it's a hekish together in the same pasuk. They're connected together. Must be the kohen is taking the blood with his hand as well. Ba'atzmo shel kohen. Yoch af mizbeach kain. You might think the blood that gets sprinkled on the mizbeach can also be caught that way. Tamalomar, there it says ki kachatos ha'ashamhu, that the korban asham is like a korban chatos. Machatas tuna kli, just like korban chatos gets caught in a utensil, av asham ta'un kli. So too, then asham has to be caught in a utensil. Nimtseis ata omer asham mitzorah shnei kohanim mekabel mesdanmo. You have to come to the conclusion that the korban asham, new rule, needs 2 kohanim, right? Needs 1 kohen to catch the blood with his hand and apply it to the mitzorah. Second kohen's got to come by and catch the blood. Now, why can't you have one? Why can't he catch the blood with utensil in one hand and with his hand in the other? Because you can't use. You have to use your right hand for service, right?
Because the blood's going to drip out of the hand.
We always have, because the answer is because you have to use your right hand for service. That we learned at the beginning, right? So you always have to make sure to apply all the rules, right? So you can't have your utensil in your left hand and catch the blood in the right. Can't do that. So you need 2 kohanim. Echad biyad ve'echad b'kli. One using his hand, one using a utensil. Zeh shekiblu b'kli b'alaway to mizbeach. The kohen who catches it in the utensil, he goes to the mizbeach to apply the blood to the mizbeach. Zeh shekiblu biyad, the kohen who catches it in his hand, b'alaway to mitzorah. He's the one who goes over to the mitzorah. Okay, next korban. Par v'sir shel Yom Kippurim, the bull and the goat of Yom Kippur. Mechti. Let's take a look at this. Tzafon ba'ola ksiv. Right, the pasuk that tells us where to shecht these korbanos is actually a pasuk by Korban Ola. The pasuk says, I'll quote it, "V'shachat oso al yerach hamizbeach tzafona." You shall slaughter it on the side of the north side of the mizbeach. That's talking about, that's in Parak Aleph, which is talking about the Korban Ola. So the way that we know that korbanos kachim have to be shechted in the north side is because Ola says so. Okay, and it doesn't say that by the others. We're going to learn that we're going to connect by chatas to an ola by what's called a hekish. A hekish is when you talk about two items in the same pasuk together, we say the rules are the same. So that by the chatos it says b'makom asher tishachet ha'olah, the location that you shech the olah, tishachet ha'chatos, you should shech the chatos too. It doesn't say where that is. It doesn't say in the north. We know it's the north because we know where the olah is. Okay, so that means the source for north is olah. So nisni olah bereisha. Why doesn't the Mishnah talk about the olah first? That's the source.
It said kache kachim.
That was so general.
It just say kache.
Why didn't say kache kachim and then go into olah before going into the Sirim of Yom Kippur? So chatos ID de osimi drasha chavivale. First answer, and we see this in several Mishnayos all over. Sometimes we're pretty proud of ourselves when we figure something out. That's where, because of how much we enjoy the process of learning, that the rabbis put first. Right? Look what we figured out. So that one, the chatos comes first.
Well, why is it a drasha? It says it in the pasuk. Just it says it.
But it's akish. We had to apply some rule. What? The location that you do the chatos is where the olah was. It's not that complicated.
I thought it's just a geferish pasuk. It's not a drasha.
Well, since you have to learn one thing from another location, it's not written in that pasuk. That's considered a drush, right? That is considered a hekesh. At least we like drushim better than simple reading psukim. Okay. That's the answer, right? So it's not a complicated drush, right? But it's v'nisnei chatos achitonos. Okay. So why don't we start with the outer chatos first? Why are we starting with the inner chatos? Because, right? Because the pasuk that says b'makom asher tishachet olas tishachet chatos, that is by an individual's chatos. That's not even by these chatos. We just know that we apply the same rules to all the chatos, but that's. So the answer is Aidi denichnas daman lifnei v'lifnim chavivale. The answer is these are very holy korbanos. The blood goes all the way to the kodesh kodashim. Since that's where these go, those come first. V'tzafona ba'ola heicha ksiva. Okay, now I gave it away, but they want to know what's the source for the korban ola being in the north. The answer is v'shachat oso al yerach hamizbeach tzafona. You shall slaughter it on the north side of the mizbeach. Ashkechan benson. That's where it says. That pasuk is talking about an ola that is a tzon. Tzon are small animals, sheep, goats. Ben bakar minolan. How do I know that applies to the larger animals, the cows, the bulls? How do I know that as well? Amar Kro, the pasuk says, vim ve'im minatzon. And if you are, the pasuk says, and if your korban is from the tzon, the small animals. Vav mosif alin yerishon. The vav connects you to the thing that was being talked about previously. V'yalamit elyon mitachton. We're going to learn the previous section, the upper section, from this new section. Just like the new section by the small animals is done in the shachted in the north, so too, since it says and, it connects back to the previous section, and therefore the previous section, also the larger animals, also have to have their shechita done in the north. Okay, hanich leman damar lemeidin. Okay, that's great. According to the opinion, it says you can go backwards, right? If you've got a vav, you can connect Parsha B back to Parsha A. Okay, that's what this opinion says. But there is an opinion that says you can't do that, right? You can only move forward. Basically, when the vav says, if I'm teaching you a law in section A, and then there's a vav to connect it, it means that, and the rule connects also to Parsha B. But it doesn't go backwards. You don't say because it's written in Parsha B, then this rule also applies in Parsha A. Ditanya, as we learn in Brisa. Ve'im nefesh. The pasuk says by V'im nefesh ki sechetov asa achas mikol mitzvos Hashem lo sa'asena v'lo yadav ve'Hashem v'nasa avano. Person who sins and he does one of the mitzvos of Hashem that you're not supposed to do, and he doesn't know and he's guilty, so he has to bear his sin. Ve'vi ayil tamim minatzon be'erkecha la'asham. He has to bring a ram that has a certain value, which we learned that is to sell a value. That's by the Parshas Asham Mi'ilos, right? This is the parsha that you have to bring a guilt offering if you commit Me'ilah. What is Me'ilah? Me'ilah is when I use something that belongs to the Beis HaMikdash and I do it b'shogeg. Without permission, I have used something that belongs to the Beis HaMikdash. I'm supposed to bring this Asham Korban. So now, L'chayev al Safik Me'ilos, Asham Tali. So this is coming to tell me, Divrei Rabbi Akiva. The Chachamim, they say that this pasuk is telling me that you are obligated for a asham talui, right? Pasuk says, if I don't know if I did it, right? So I don't know, this item, was it hektish, was it not? I'm not sure. So what do you do when you're not sure? The answer
It's
is,
like a hefsek.
it's like a suffix, right? Suffix, yes, it's a suffix, right? So since I don't know, there's a korban for that. There's an I don't know korban. That's the Asham Tali. You bring that korban, and then when you find out, you bring the real korban. But that korban protects you in the meantime until you know, right? So it's the I don't know korban. So that's what Rabbi Akiva says. V'chachamim potrim. The Chacham say you don't bring a korban. You don't bring a asham tali for suffik miila. So my lav b'hakamifli. Why are they arguing? What are they arguing about? Maybe they're arguing Mar Savar Lemedin, Umar Savar Ein Lemedin. Rabbi Akiva holds that whenever there's a vav, right? So then, even though the next section, which is talking about Me'ilah, teaches back to the previous section, which is talking about the vav of Ve'im Nefesh, which is written by the Asham Tolui, is connecting back to the parsha of Me'ilah to tell me that just like that an Asham Toli can be brought in a case of doubtful Me'ilah. That's how Rabbi Akiva, from the Vav, which means Parsha B, can teach me back to Parsha A.
Parsha B is about Me'ilah.
Parsha B is Asham Toli.
That's for any Avera, right?
Any Avera, correct. And now,
I'm not sure about.
so therefore, but now to tell me that it applies back to the Parsha before it, which was talking about Me'ilah, the Chum say, no way, right? That's not Parsha A is disconnected from Parsha B.
Right.
Rabbi Akiva says, what are you talking about? The Vav connects them. You can learn about Parsha A from Parsha B. So therefore, that's their argument, right? Amar Rav Papa says, no, that is not their argument. Dekuliyama Lemedin, everybody holds you can learn Parsha B from Parsha A, and Parsha A from Parsha B. Behind time of the Rabbanan, why do the Rabbanan say you don't bring in Asham Talui here? It's a different reason. Nemar kan mitzvos v'nemar bechatos chilev mitzvos. It says here by the korban Asham Talui that when do you bring it? When you violate any of the commandments that you're not supposed to do. And then it also says by bringing the chatas chilev, which is the regular sin offering one brings when you do any avera. Right? If you do any regular crime and didn't realize and then you become aware, you bring a sin offering. That one also says for doing one of the mitzvos. Therefore, what it's teaching us is you're only liable to bring an asham talui for the same types of averos that you'd be obligated to bring a korban chatos for the sin offering for. Sin offering is only if it's an avera that you would get kares for if you did it on purpose. And therefore, an Asham Tolui is only protecting you against those if you don't know that you did it. So, Afkan, Shechayav Nazarun Kars Vashigoso Chatos. So, that's not the case by Me'ilah. Me'ilah, if you know you did it, you bring a Korban Asham, you bring a guilt offering, you don't bring a Korban Chatos. It's not, Me'ilah is not a Kares Avera, it's not the same. Rabbi Akiva says, Ma laholon bekavua, Afkan bekavua. Rabbi Akiva says, yeah, but it's an established standard korban, meaning you're right if the korban that you would be bringing would be a korban olav yored, an elevated offering, variable offering, right? Like, for example, if you swore falsely and therefore it depends on whether you're going to be bringing, if you're poor or you're rich, which korban you're going to bring. That one, you're right, you don't bring an asham tali for. But a regular fixed asham is the same as a fixed chatos, and you are going to bring a asham tali if you're unaware. Lafuke chatos de tumas mikdash ukdoshav. I'm sorry, not a oath of oath one. Oath does bring a korban asham as well. Anyway, I don't remember exactly, but the chatos, the one that you bring in a korban olav yored, the example is tumas mikdash ukdoshav. If you're tamei if you become tamei and you go b'shogeg into the Beis Hamikdash and you have awareness before and awareness after, as we learned in Masechah Shavuos, you bring the korban olav yored, the variable offering. So and therefore you don't bring an asham totally for that one. V'Rabbanan ein gzera shava lemechza. The Rabbanan say, what are you talking about? You can't. There's no such thing as a half gezerah shava. Right? In other words, what are you telling me that the Gzera Shava is telling me that this rule only applies to things that are exactly like the Chatos, but also things that are like the Asham? What is that? Like that? There's the rule has to be applied universally. So therefore, Right, by an Asham. So therefore, if the Asham Tolui is telling you that the rule is that if Asham Tolui, you're telling it's the same as the Chatas Chelev, then it has to have all the rules of the Chatas Chelev. It can't be an Asham. It has to be a Chatas. For Rabbi Akiva, Nami Gzer Shava Lemech. So Rabbi Akiva agrees with that principle, right? You can't pick and choose when you're coming to a Gzer Shava. It has to be all or nothing. So Nachinami, you're right. That's a good point. So forget Rav Papa. That was a nice try. That isn't what they're arguing about either. Rather, the hacha behaka miflagi. This is the argument for real. Rabbi Akiva savar ve'im nefesh ksiv vav mosif al nirishon. Rabbi Akiva says there's a vav ve'im nefesh, so therefore you're going to connect the me'ilah, the sin of using the Beis Hamikdash items without permission, to the Asham Toli to say you have to bring an Asham Toli if you commit me'ilah. V'rabbanan nami ksiv ve'im nefesh. So the Rabbanan said also have that word. So lema beha kemiflagi. So let's say this is what the argument is about. Demar savar hekesh adif, umar savar gzir shava adif. You've got two different conflicting teachings. If you go by the hekesh, the connection, then you're right. You have to bring korban asham toloi because there's a connection. But if you learn from the gzir shava tells me that you only bring an asham toloi when it's exactly like a chatos, which means you wouldn't bring one from Me'ilah. So which is stronger, a hekesh or a gzir shava? I've got conflicting teachings. So Rabbi Akiva says a hekesh is stronger. The Rabbanan say gzir shava is stronger. So the answer is lo, not true. Dekuliyama de hekesh adif. Everyone agrees a hekesh is stronger, right? So Rabbi Akiva should be right, which is interesting, by the way, right? I would have always presumed the gzir shava. Hekesh is stronger than gzir shava. V'amri lach Rabbanon, and the Rabbanon will say, Tachton hu de gamar me elyon le'osham bekesef shkolim, right? That what you have, the Rabbanan will say, the lower parsha is learning from the above parsha that in osham requires two shkolim, right? Because we know that by a korban me'ilah regular osham, there's a minimum amount of the price for that korban, which is not the case by other korbanos, right? There's no minimum amount. You get a deal on your animal, you get a deal on your animal. By a korban asham, there's a price minimum. That's also the case. They learned that also to an asham toli, the price is as well. Shalot tomar yehes feiko chamor mivada'o, because you shouldn't say that the korban asham toloi should be more strict than a regular asham that you know about, right? Mavada'o chatos bas danka, afsfeko osham bar danka. So if you know you did it, you're going to bring a korban chatos. That's going to be a 2 shekel requirement. So then your suffix, right? For sure, also has to be a 2 shekel penalty. Same thing. Now, so 1 second. So the Rabbanan learn this rule that the Asham Tolui, which is the written second from the Parsha Me'ilah, which is before it, that by the Asham Me'ilah it needs to have 2 shekel, as we just said. So too by the Asham Tolui you need 2 shekel, right? So okay, so then we see that the Chachamim also agree that you're learning this hekesh, right? So therefore, the Rabbanan can't say the Gzer Shava pushes off the hekesh, because if you're learning this law from that hekesh as well, how are you going to learn that hekesh? So the Rabbi Akiva, Hai Svara Minole. Rabbi Akiva says, okay, I'm not learning that rule from this hekesh, right? Because I'm learning this other rule that the Me'ilah applies to an Asham Totally from this hekesh. So what do I do? Where do I know this rule that you have to have that the Asham Totally? The answer is Nafgali Mizos Torah Asham. The answer is he learns it from the fact that it says this is the rule by the Asham, meaning Torah Achas Lekol Ashamos. There's a rule, all of the Ashamos have the same rules. Meaning, if you have listed in one of the korban ashams someplace that there is a 2 shekel minimum payment, So that is the case by all of them. So I don't need a special limud here for that. Therefore, this special limud must be teaching me that a asham totally is appropriate for me'ilah. Okay, tinach man de isle toras. Fine, I understand that according to the opinion that says whenever the word toras is mentioned, it means to unify all the korbanos of that type. Man de isle toras mehecha gamar. The one who doesn't agree with this idea that it's toras, where do they learn it from? Gamar be'erkecha be'erkecha. The answer is there's a gzera shava from be'erkecha. Right? So he says, so where are those? So one is in the pasuk of Asham Ilos, the Asham that you bring for taking from the base of Mikdash. The other one is from Asham Gezelos. It says, Ve'hevias Asham la Hashem ayil tamim minatzom be'erkecha. Asham Gezelos is when you deny owner that you have something in somebody's property and thereby stealing it. So you have to bring this korban Asham. So therefore, Asham Tolui, it says also, Vevi ayil tamim minatzom be'erkecha. Whenever it says be'erkecha, so we learn from that Gzer Shava that you're going to have a 2 shekel requirement, right? Two slime. So now, Tinach hecha dichsiv be'erkecha, so that's great. Every time by an Asham it uses the word be'erkecha, now I know that it means that there's a 2 sela minimum. Asham shivcha charufa deloksiv ba erkecha ma'ikla memar. What about the korban Asham that is brought in the case of a shivcha charufa? Right? She is a slave, that is, she's half slave and she's half free, right? She was owned by 2 people, and one of them gave her a contract that she's freed, so now she's half Jewish and still half Shifcha Kananis.
There's no half Jewish. There's no thing that's half Jewish.
There is. This, Shifcha Charufa, right? She was a slave to owned by 2 people. One of them frees her. She's free on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she's a slave to the other person on Mondays and Wednesdays. Her halachos change, right? So she becomes engaged to an Eved Ivri. An Eved Ivri, right, can marry this person because she's partially a slave, but an Eved Ivri is allowed to marry a Shifcha Kananis, and an Eved Ivri is Jewish, she can marry a Jewish woman also. So that's our solution. Now, if now she's mizana, she has an adulterous relationship with somebody, so that person, right, is doesn't get misa because she's not a completely free person. She doesn't have a status of marriage in the sense of a totally free person. So rather, he brings a korban of shivcha charufa, brings an asham of shivcha charufa for that avera. So that's where the shivcha charufa comes in. We'll learn more about shivcha charufa, but that's where it is. But it doesn't say the word be'erkecha. So how do I know that asham also needs to have 2 sela? So Michael Memar, the answer is Gomer ba'ayil. There's a different Gzera Shava. It was ba'ayil that talks about the korban by the korban asham of me'ilah. It says the word ba'ayil, and then it also says by the shivcha charufa the word ba'ayil. Separate Gzera Shava to tell me that also that one has to be worth 2 sela. Okay, very nice. Question: Chatos minolon deboy tzafon. What's the source for a korban chatos needs to be shechted in the north? Because the pasuk says v'shachat es hachatos b'makom ha'olah. You're supposed to shech the chatos in the location of the olah. Ashkan shchita v'kabel minolon. So that's shchita. How do I know that the catching of the blood also has to be done in the north? Tichsev, the pasuk says v'lakacha kohen midama chatas. Right, the kohen's supposed to take from the blood of the chatos. Mikabel. Again, that it says v'lakacha kohen. And the drasha is lekicha, from the word to take, is kabbalas adam, and we are going to connect it because vilakach, right? So the vav is going to connect it to the previous pasuk, right? Just like it says that you're doing the shchita in the location of the previous one, and the kohen shall take, meaning the location of the kohen taking shall also be in the north, where that shchita was done on the olah. Fine. So fine. Mekabel atzmu minolan. Now we had learned that the person who's doing the shchita does not have to be in that location. The person who's doing shchita, we said, could be standing in the south as long as the animal's in the north. But the person, right? If you have, right? Let's say the animal is here, right? And the person doing shchita is standing here on the south side and reaches over and does the shechita on the animal into the other side. That's okay. Not okay if the kohen is standing on the south side when he catches the blood, right? That we learned that we had discussed that before. So where's the source for that? Because the pasuk says, Kabbalah mina dichsil v'lakach. Okay. Mekabel atzmo we know, and how do we know the person who is the Kohen who's catching the boat has to be standing in the north? Amar Krasa says v'lakach lo. Now the pasuk doesn't say lo yikach. Pasuk doesn't say lo yikach, but they're breaking the pasuk, the word v'lakach, into two words. Lo yikach means he has to be taken, meaning even the person who's doing the taking has to be in the north. Okay, that's a unique drasha. We don't see that kind of drasha where you add extra letters that are not there very often. Ashkechan lemitzvah. So fine, the rule of kachim is that if it says to do it one time, it means it's a mitzvah to do it, but it doesn't mean it's required. If you don't do it, the korban is not possible. Minayin, so la'akev minayin, how do I know that if you don't do it in the north, it ruins the korban? Kra achrina ksiv, another pasuk says, v'shachat oso b'makom asher yishchat es ha'olah. You shall slaughter it in the location that you slaughtered the olah. A separate new pasuk that says that. So now that it's repeated, we said that's la'akev. V'tanya, we're in a brisa. Heichan olah nishchata. The brisa says, where is an olah slaughtered? Slaughtered bit safon in the north. Af zeh bit safon. Also, that's where the korban chatos is. V'chi mikan atol lomeid. So is that really this pasuk by the seir nasi? That's where this pasuk that says that it's also repeated that it should be shechted in the same location. Is that where that pasuk is? Valok for number, the pasuk already says, that pasuk is by the regular individual korban chatos. It says that you have to shecht it where you did the korban olah. Ha-limma yatza. So then why is it that we're repeating it a second time? Likboa lo makom. The answer is to establish it as set. Right? It's la'akev. It must be done there. She'im lo shachtu b'tzafon, pasal. That if you don't shecht it in the north, then the korban is pasal. Ata omer lekach yatza, oein el shezet ton tzafon ve'ein acher ton tzafon. Well, we had two conflicting rules. Remember we learned yesterday that a shnei ksuvim abayin kechad. If you write something twice, it means that it's excluding everything else. So maybe the reason why it's written by two korban chatos is not to tell me that it's required by all of them. It's to tell me that it's only these two who have to be done in the north. None of the other ones have to be done in the north. Tamalomar, therefore the pasuk says, again, that pasuk is talking about the chatos of a yachid, an individual. That is in Vayikra Dalid. So that pasuk is, again, that's the one is the chatos this the general chatos of the tzibor, Helam Davar. Now we have it written also by the chatos of an individual. And so now we have it written multiple times. So Zeb Bana Av L'Kol Chatos. This now teaches me, this is the rule, by all the Korban Chatos, Shiur Ta'onos Tzafon, they need to be done in the north. Ashkechan Seir Nasi, Bein LaMitzvah, Bein Lakiv. Okay, fine. By the Seir of the Nasi, the goat of the Nasi, that his offering is brought. So we say that it is a mitzvah and it is required. Shachatos Nami Ashkechan L'Mitzvah. So we also know that it's a mitzvah by all the other korban chatos. La'akev minalan. How do I know that it's also required by all the other korbanos? The answer is dichsiv, because the pasuk says bekisba uksiv besiira. So the answer is, it says. It's written, but so the word of that is supposed to be shechted in the north is written both by the sheep and by the goats, right? And also says so it's written again two more times by those, which tells me that is a requirement that is now it's required by all korban chatos. Okay, it's written just many times. Do it in the same place as the Olah to teach me all of those things. Ella also lamali. Okay, so now, why does it say by the seir nasi that when the nasi does his avera, everybody else does an avera, so they have one type of korban. If the person who's in charge, the nasi, the king, he does an avera, he has a special type of korban chatos. It says by his korban, it says so. Where's that pasuk? Right? V'samach yado al rosh ha'seir v'shachat oso. You shall shecht it. There's something that's by it, but not by others. So therefore, miboyle lichtanya, we need it like the Brisa says. Oso b'tzafon ve'in seir nachshon b'tzafon. Only this korban chatos goes in the north, but the korban chatos that Nachshon ben Aminadav, the nasi, that he brought when they were inaugurating the Mishkan in Parshas Naso, that one did not require to be shechted in the north. Just, I guess it's trivia, right? It happened already. It's never happening again. The inaugural chatos didn't require it. Okay, Vitanya. Now, why do we need a pasuk? The Gemara is going to explain now, Brisa, why we need a pasuk specifically to exclude that. Because v'samach yado al rosh ha'sa'ir, so he's going to lean his hand. This is by the seir that the nasi brings, right? The nasi, the king's seir. It says v'samach yado al rosh ha'sa'ir. He's going to place his hands and he's going to lean onto the goat. L'rabos sir nachshon l'smicha. So that tells us. Right, it's going to be like the goat, the extra hay. The goat tells me why couldn't it just say v'samach yado al rosho on its head? Why does it have to say the goat? To tell me it's like the other goat, just like Nachshon ben Aminadav brought a goat to inaugurate, and he did smicha. So too, the nasi also does smicha here. Different Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbi Shimon says l'rabos seiri avodos kachavim l'smicha. To tell me that this goat needs smicha, so too does the goat, when the community does avodah zarah, that goat also needs to have smicha lina. Because salka daita chamina, I would have thought, ho'il ve'israbu l'smicha, israbu nami l'tzafon, I might have thought that since you're going, that Rabbi Yehuda is telling me, that this Bryce is telling me, that since the goat of Nachshon requires to be smicha, that it must also require other things like being shechted in the north. Therefore, this pasuk is coming to tell me, no, it needs smicha, but it doesn't need to be done in the north. Maskif l'Ravina. So Ravina says, Hanicha l'Rabbi Yehuda. So fine, I get it according to Rabbi Yehuda, because he's the one who teaches us to connect the Nasi's offering to Nachshon ben Aminadav's offering, and therefore we have to have a special pasuk to separate them again. Rabbi Shimon ma'ika l'meimar, but what would Rabbi Shimon? What's the reason? According to him, he says you don't have to explain again that they need they don't need tzafon, because he doesn't connect it. He doesn't say it needs smicha either. Okay.
Because he's connecting it to the avodos kachavim.
Because he's connecting to avodos kachavim. He's not connecting it to Nachshon. So there's no reason for me to presume that the korban of Nachshon needed tzafon, because it needs to be in the north, because you don't need smicha either. Samarle Marzutra Bre de Rav Tavi l'Ravina. So Marzutra, the son of Rav Tavi, said to Ravina, Ul Rabbi Yehuda minicha. Still, it's not really. I mean, it's not so much better if you look at Rabbi Yehuda's position. L'maid is Rabbi, l'maid lo is Rabbi. What's our rule of drashos? We don't say, hey, since the pasuk comes and tells us that you need smicha, you must need north also. Well, why would you say that? The pasuk just tells you need smicha. Leave it there. Why would you extend that and say, pasuk tells us you need smicha? Why would I jump the gun and say that you need north also? You're going to say, well, we've got a binyanav right now. So there's a rule that these two korbanos are the same, and therefore now you can compare everything to them. Well, in Cain, smicha gufa teisi binyanav. Well, if now you've connected it, why would you need the pasuk to say v'samach yodo al rosh ha'sa'ir, right? Because there would be a binyan av. We would say these korbanos are goat offerings of the nasi, and they're in the same category already. And I'd already learned them in a binyan av together. I don't need the pasuk telling me you need smicha. If you're saying that these korbanos are the same, then they're the same. I don't need a pasuk now to tell me about smicha then. Ella sha'a midoros lo gamrinon. Hachanami sha'a midoros lo gamrinon. The answer is the reason why Rabbi Yehuda doesn't learn the smicha of Nachshon from the individuals from the individual's seir is because you can't learn a korban that was brought once in history from a korban that's brought all the time. We said there's a binyan av, those two should be the same. No, they're not. They're not the same. Okay? So therefore Rabbi Yehuda, there's no reason why Rabbi Yehuda would, again, it's the same problem that you had with Rabbi Shimon, would be the same problem you now have with Rabbi Yehuda. There's no reason to connect the goat that Nachshon min Aminadav brought to the goat of the Nasi, because they're two completely different types of korbans. One is a unique korban that was brought once in history. One is a korban that's brought all the time. The only way to connect them is because the pasuk says v'samach yado, but there would be no reason to extend that over to needing north. Ella, so rather, oso Bitzafon ve'in hashochet ve'in shochet bitzafon. Rather, we're going to explain. You know what it means that it needs to be by the nasi. What it means? It means that the korban needs to be in the north when you slaughter it, but the person who's doing the shechita does not. As we discussed, let's say the person who's doing the shechita has a very long knife, and is standing outside of the north of the Beis Hamikdash and does shechita. That is kosher, right? He doesn't have to be in the Beis Hamikdash to do the shechita. So shochet. Mid Rabbi Yachia nafka. 1 second. That we don't learn from this. Also, we have a different drasha to tell me that the person who's doing the shechita doesn't have to stand in the azara. The Tanya where Rabbi Achia or Rabbi Achia says, "V'shachat oso al yerach mizbeach tzafona." You shall slaughter it on the side of the north side of the mizbeach. Ma tam b'lomer. Why does the pasuk say oso? And that's by the korban ola. By the korban ola. Lefi shematzinu omed b'tzafon mekabel b'tzafon. We know that the Kohen has to stand in the north and he has to catch the blood in the north. And if that Kohen is standing in the south, and he catches the blood in the north, puzzle, that is not a valid Kabbalah that we learned. We might think that Shechita is the same thing. The pasuk says, "V'shachat oso." You slaughter it. Oso b'tzafon v'nashochet b'tzafon. Only the korban needs to be in the north, not the person doing the Shechita. Okay, so now. We don't need to learn this from the Oso by the seer of the Nasi because we learned this rule by the Ola. So Ella Oso B'tzafon. So what is the reason again? What is the reason for this goat by the Nasi? We're struggling. What's the extra Oso for? Oso B'tzafon ve'ein ben Of B'tzafon. The answer is this chatos needs to be done in the north, but not the bird. The birds that do malika. When you do malika, they don't have to be done in the north.
What's malika?
Malika is when you take the fingernail and you kill the bird using the fingernail. That's correct. That's malika. That does not need to be done in the north. Okay, that's a new rule. Detanya, because we learned in a brisa, Yachul Yehe ben Of Ta'on Safon. You might think a bird offering also needs to have malika done in the north. Dinhu. There's a logic, right? Why that would be. Uma ben son shelo kavalo kohen kavalo tzafon. A regular animal. The person who does shechita doesn't even have to be a kohen. But it still needs to be done in the north. So, Ben Of, a bird offering, Shekava lo Kohen, the bird offering Malika has to be done by a Kohen. Eino din sheyik below tzafon. For sure, it must be done in the north. Talmud Lomar, Oso. Therefore, the pasuk says, Oso, that only the animal needs to be done in the north, not a bird offering. Okay, Mala ben son shekain kava lo kli. So, what makes you say that the bird is like, what's the logic? Your logic is that the bird is more lenient than the animal is more lenient than the bird, right? So that doesn't make sense because ben son shekain kavalo kli. You need utensil to catch the blood by an animal. You don't need a utensil to catch the blood by the bird. He said you're just going to sprinkle it directly from the bird. So you're right. No kal v'chomers there. Ella oso b'tzafon vein pesach b'tzafon. The answer is you need to do these korbanos in the north, but not a korban pesach. Korban pesach does not need to be done in the north. Titania, we learned in our brisa. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Yachol Yehei Pesach Ton Tzafon. You might think the korban pesach has to be shech in the north. V'dinu. There's a logic to that. Uma ola shekain lo kavalos man l'shchita so kavalot tzafon. An ola can be brought as a donation, can be done at any time. So it needs to be done in the north. Pesach shekavalos man shchita so. Pesach is more strict. It has to be done on a specific day, specific time. Eino din sheyikba tzafon. It must be done in the north, right? Talmud Lomar, therefore it says, so that no, it doesn't need to be. Yeah, but why do you think the korban pesach is less stringent than an ola? Mala ola shekain kalil. An ola is much more strict as a sacrifice. You have to burn the entire thing, right? That's a very strict korban. That's shekain kalil. The answer is mechatos. So the answer is, well, then we'll learn from chatos, right? Chatos is also done in the north, but it is not. It's not completely burned in the fire. Yeah, but chatos is a very strict thing because chatos is an atonement offering. That makes it very okay. So we'll take Asham. Let's go to Asham. Yeah, but mal Asham shekain kodshei kodshim. Asham is kodshei kodshim. That's the holiest level of sacrifices. And now that we've said that answer, mikula nami shekain kodshei kodshim. You could have said that about any of the ola and the chatos. Those are higher level offerings. The korban of a Pesach is not kodshei kodshim. You can eat it outside of the Azara, for example, right? So liolam kidarmina me'akaro. Okay, let's go back. And oso is oso. The way we said before, oso b'tzafon vein hashochet b'tzafon. The shochet b'tzafon, it means that the animal has to be in the north, but the person doing the shechita does not have to be north. So if your question was what we learned it from Rabbi Yechia, because he says by the korban olah, it has to be that the shechita, the animal has to be in the north, not the person. Lav lumute shochet b'tzafon ella ein shochet b'tzafon ava mekabel b'tzafon. He says that the source for that rule, what that's telling me is this pasuk is telling me that by the seer of the nasi, the shochet, that only the shochet doesn't have to be in the north, but the person who's catching the blood does. Right? In other words, because we learned by the Ola, the person who's catching the blood has to be in the north, and then the person who's shochet does not. Then we learn here, the person who's the shochet, we already know the person who's the shochet does not have to be in the north. Then it comes and says, oh, so this rule of the shochet only applies to this, but the person who's catching the blood does indeed to catch it in the north. So therefore, this becomes the oso, becomes the source for where the person who's catching the blood has to be in the north. So, but 1 second. Mekabel mi velakach lo kach nafka. If you go back to the beginning of this whole discussion, we said, how do we know that you're supposed to catch the blood in the north? Because it says velakach, and we changed the language to lo kach. We didn't like that; it wasn't great. So he says velakach lo kach lo mashmalei. He says, I don't like that drasha. That's a very weird drasha. Velakach lo kach. That's not. It's not a drasha he loves. Therefore, oso is the source. Okay. Ashkechan shchita be'ola lemitzvah. So now we have found that the shchita being done in the north by an ola is lemitzvah. Kabbalah nami lemitzvah ashkechan. We also found by the ola that catching the blood in the north is also a mitzvah. Shchita ve'kabbalah la'akev minolan. How do I know that doing the shchita and catching the blood is required in the north? And if it's not done in the north, it ruins the korban. Amar Rav Barava extends. V'itim Rav Barshila. Some say Rav Barshila. Kal v'chomer. There's a kal v'chomer. Ma chatas haba mikoach ola. If a korban chatas, which is a derivative of ola me'akeves, that we already have learned because it is written several times that it must be done and it cannot be. It's puzzle if it's not done. Ola sheba chatas mikocha eno din shemakeves. Ola, which is the source, for sure it's required. Yeah, but malachatas kemechaferes al chayve krisos. Right now we're going to say chatas is strict because it saves people's. It gives people an atonement. So Ravina says ha kashalei l'Rav Ada bar Ava klum matzino tov chomer min ha'ikr. So he says Ravina says. He's not saying that chatos is more lenient. It's not a kal v'chomer in that way. He's just saying we never ever have a source which is more lenient than the derivative. It's not a kal v'chomer in the sense that one is stricter than the other. It is a kal v'chomer in the sense that the source and the derivative have to have the same rules. So that's what's different. So therefore, if the chatos is required, then the ola is for sure required.
So it's a good limit.
Yes. So we're back to it being a good limit because it's not a kal v'chomer in the traditional sense. Okay. Amar le Marzutra brei de Rav Mari le Ravina. Marzutra, the son of Rav Mari, said to Ravina, Velo, really? We never have such a thing where the derivative is more strict than the original thing? I'll show you an example. V'harei maser. What about Meiser Sheni? Meiser Sheni, we take the second tithe off our crops. We have to bring that tithe to Yerushalayim to consume it there. Dehu nifta. The rule is that if it becomes tameh, you can redeem that for money and buy other produce with it. Now, ilu lakuach bekasef meiser. Now, let's say you already did that. Let's say you already transferred onto money and you bought more food, right? Because you could do that. You can sell all your oranges and go up to your Yerushalayim and go to a restaurant and buy food. That's Meiser Sheni, right? So let's say you did that, and then that food becomes tameh. Eino nifta. You cannot redeem that secondary food. Now, why is that? That means this Ditznan, we're in a Mishnah. Halakuach b'kesef master shenitma yipadeh. When your Meiser Sheni becomes the Meiser Sheni becomes tameh, you can redeem that and now get new food, and you're good. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yikaver. Rabbi Yehuda says that it is that you can't, right? That things that are, Rabbi Yehuda says that which is purchased from Meiser Sheni, which is the secondary thing, which is now stricter than the original, right? The original you could have redeemed, but now the derivative, that which you bought with money from Meiser Sheni, if that becomes tummy, that you can't redeem. Well, what's going on? The answer is Hasam lo alima kedusha say limitfas pidyone. It's not that the secondary thing is more strict. It's that the secondary lacks kedusha. In order to transfer kedusha from this to this, you need to have strong kedusha here that you can remove and move over here. If this has already been transferred to here, this kedusha is very weak now. I can't now. It's too weak to transfer. It's untransferable because of weakness, not untransferable because of strictness. So therefore, that you're right. It's a derivative. It's stricter, but it's not a derivative that's stricter because it is that the derivative is stricter. It's just that it's stricter because it's actually less. Now he's going to give one more example. We'll pick that up on Sunday. He's going to give a couple more examples, two more examples. We'll pick that up on Sunday of where derivatives could be stronger than the real deal. But we're on Mem Tes, and the good news is Daf Yomi today, right? Daf Yomi today was on Nun Gimel, so we are now 4 back, right? Now it's getting reasonable.
Truma, where we left off.
Yes, Hare Truma. That's exactly right.